And Sheldon, would you please lead us in the pledge to our flag?
Be my pleasure. Everyone stand up, face the flag, good hand, your heart, and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic under God, indivisible.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yep. Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 6, Audrey Miller. Here. Division 5, Robert Parris.
Here.
Division 3, Jay Tremblay.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
General Counsel Tilden Kim.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Yeah, thank you. Move on to voluntary public roll call. We always like to hear from those that may be listening in, that aren't attending in person. Now would be a good time to identify.
Jack, go ahead.
John, hey, Jack. Welcome.
Jack Cephas, White Fence 3.
Yeah, welcome.
Hi.
Roseland Community Service District, Ben Stewart.
Glad you're with us. Okay.
Take water contractors.
Glad you're with us. Thank you. Okay, hearing no others, we'll move on to item number 4, voluntarily public comments, period open to the public. If there's anything that's not on the agenda you'd like to address the board, now's the time to do so. Otherwise, you can do it when that item comes up for discussion. Item number 6A1, adoption of agenda for June 24th, 2025.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move we adopt the agenda board order 6A1.
We have a motion by Director Parris.
I'll second.
Second by Director Miller. If there's no further questions or discussion, Madam Secretary.
Audrey Miller. Yes. Robert Parris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Okay, that'll bring us to consent calendar. We just have, one item on that, approve the minutes of May 1st, 2025. I think if we had a chance to look at those minutes, if not, we'll take a moment.
Mr. President, I move approval of 7A1.
Can we have a motion by Director Mercy?
Second.
Second by Director Van Dam. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller. Yes. Robert Parris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah. Moving right along, we'll move to go to item number 8, and 8A1, that's Director Van Dam, the State Water Projects Committee.
Yes, we had our meeting the other day. It went well. And Peter or Matt, you're gonna take this one?
Yeah, I can kick it off.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President Van Dam, and good evening, board members. So as Vice President Van Dam mentioned, the State Water Project Committee met. You can see on the agenda a couple times. We met back in early June and then again just yesterday. So we'll start with item 8A1, which is information only. Back in early June, Manny, how do you pronounce the last name? Bahia, who is the infrastructure manager with the state water contractors, gave a real good presentation on the recently developed golden mussel and the state water contractors and state water project detection and response to that new golden mussel. So the committee thought it'd be good to invite Manny to the meeting this evening and give it the same presentation to the full board. So I know we have Manny on the line, and Manny will control the the presentations from here. And at this point, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, Manny, welcome. You did a very good job the last presentation.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm glad I could be available to present to you all. As mentioned, this presentation was provided earlier this month. I have made some updates just kind of on latest developments. We can go ahead and go to the next slide here. So for those that are not familiar with golden mussels, they're an invasive freshwater bivalve species. They're native to China and Southeast Asia. And in October of 2024, DWR and CDFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife Service, spotted them in the port of Stockton. They did some DNA testing to confirm that it was the golden mussel species. Some of you may know that quagga mussels and zebra mussels have been in the area for a while. I think it was the early 2000s when there was a potential risk of outbreak on that with that species. But this species has been, they've been known to be more resilient, and therefore the threat is greater than those prior mussels that were introduced to us. And the likely entrance was the port of Stockton through the ballast of boats and the cargo ships that are traveling here from international ports. Next slide. So this map shows where they have been detected and spread. So each one of those red dots indicates a location where there was a detection of the golden mussel. There's approximately 30 locations in the Delta and then also within the State Water Project. So all the main cluster of red dots you're seeing on the top of that map is in the greater Delta area. And then at the midpoint there, you're seeing the San Luis Reservoir. A few have been spotted there, and then they have been detected further downstream in the California Aqueduct and then the coastal branch as well. And those are the last three dots you're seeing on the bottom of your screen. And then there's a little ruler there that kind of in the inset in that map that shows you what they look like and what their relative sizes. So that's kind of where we are currently with the spread of golden mussel. Next slide, please. So I kind of alluded to that this is a greater threat, and why it's a threat is you can see that picture on the right-hand side there. You're seeing the mussel has infested a water delivery pipe, and they kind of latch onto any hard surface. And you can see why this can be problematic to water conveyance. They can shut down the entire pipe, anywhere from loss of conveyance capacity to kind of taking over the whole pipe. And this process is called biofouling. And then separate from the water infrastructure threat that these mussels pose, there's also potential for ecosystem disruption. They can alter the food web. And then also there is a threat to water quality. So they've been known to remove particles from water, causing increased clarity. And then when the sunlight hits it, it has a potential for certain blooms to occur that can be toxin producing. So, which could be, obviously very concerning for water delivery systems or for municipal use there. Here, I'm going to kind of go over some notes from, there's some questions last time that were asked, and it was asked, what is the lifespan of a golden mussel? And it's typically 2 to 3 years, but under the right conditions, they can live longer than 5 years. They can live in temperatures in the mussel stage that are between 41 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And then in the veliger stage, which is when they're microscopic and not visible to the eye, They can live in water temperatures from 59 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's a pretty wide range. And then there's other chemicals that they're more resistant to than the other mussel species we've been invaded with. One thing that has been known to effectively treat them is UV treatment, and I'll touch on that in the next slide. So that's a little bit more about the mussel. Another interesting note is, so once they're in the lodge position, if you were to dislodge them from like this pipe here that's in this image, if the current was strong enough, they will continue to float downstream, and they could latch on to the next hard surface, unless they were obviously crushed in that process. Next slide, please. So there's been some good coordination on the broader statewide level. So then, there's DWR, which is a state agency, and then there's a broader state agency. So CDFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife, organized a multi-agency task force to kind of get all agencies aware of the issue, and then think about how to get the general public aware of the invasion that we face. The focus of those conversations was one, outreach, and then how do we get funding for increased monitoring, containment, and then what policies need to be updated. And then the last slide, I'll kind of touch on some of the policies we're working on to amend to safeguard, public water agencies and the state water project. So that coordination was very helpful. A lot of the outreach was effective in getting the reservoir operators and managers aware of the threat. There's been several closures of reservoirs. And then also there's vessel inspections that are going on at many of the reservoirs to make sure that the mussels are not being transported via boats to other water bodies. And then there was a series of public workshops that were held to kind of educate the general public of what's going on. There was a framework that was released earlier this year in April. And it was just kind of more of an awareness document, and outlined things that agencies should be tracking. I think it was helpful, but the next effort is going to be more important in regards to, I think the subsequent slides will touch on what DWR is doing specifically to protect the state water project. And that last bullet touches on it, ongoing science and outreach. So we can go to the next slide. This slide here just kind of shows you how hardy, resilient the mussel is. I'll just kind of summarize it here. One of the treatments that was effective for the other species of mussels that have been introduced to our area is the treatment of copper concentrations. So there was a study done to see the concentration of copper you need, and then kind of look at the mortality that would occur within a 30-day period. So going down to the middle of those bullets there, you'll see that there's 100 parts per billion, 300 parts per billion concentration, and then 500 parts per billion concentration. So with 100 parts per billion, there was a 0 to 7% mortality that occurred. With 300 parts per billion, there was a 94 to 97% mortality rate. And then with 500 parts per billion, there was a 100% mortality rate. And these numbers are far larger in concentration than what's required of quagga and zebra mussels. So you would, if you went down this route to eliminate the species, you would have to introduce the copper to the water, but then you would need to kind of clean that water back up and remove the copper that you inserted for it to meet water quality standards for drinking. So And then as you can imagine, 30-day contact time to get some of these results is pretty disruptive to water conveyance and how we need to move water from Banks to San Luis through the aqueduct and to the end users. That 30-day period is not ideal. It's not a good way to handle this threat. So the next slide. So some of the things what DWR did specific for the State Water Project is they put together a Golden Mussel task force. It consists of environmental scientists, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, project managers to kind of see how they can safeguard the State Water Project. And immediately they determined that the focus should be on facilities within the Delta and the San Luis Reservoir. Excuse me, and then also focus on critical water infrastructure that's needed to make sure that the pumping plants are functioning. Such as the cooling water, the fire water systems, and those tend to be a smaller diameter pipe. So those were kind of deemed to be most critical to protect. Luckily enough, through other testing, it was determined that UV systems with the current technology that's out there, there's a medium pressure UV system that's effective for pipe diameters 14 inches and smaller. And all of the pipelines that are for cooling water systems and service water and fire water systems are smaller diameter than that. So that's one positive. So in this image here on the top right-hand corner, what you're seeing is an existing a layout of critical infrastructure that needs to be protected at one of the power plants. And that kind of diagram there of that light blue cylinder, that's showing where you could retrofit a UV filtration system into the existing system there, and that would kind of help safeguard that system for a pumping plant. So they went through all the pumping plants in the Delta and the facilities in San Luis Reservoir as well, and kind of walk through there and took a look at what it will take to protect that critical infrastructure. Let me see if I missed anything. Nope. We can go to the next slide. So in addition to kind of the actual actions that need to occur at the facilities, DWR has implemented inspections at Oroville Reservoir, and those are going to hopefully prevent golden mussel from being an issue at that facility. As you know, boaters will often they'll go to multiple water bodies to recreate, and these inspections are very important. And the golden mussel, if I remember right, I think they can survive 10 to 14 days in the dry. So how you clean a boat and quarantine it is really important as well. And I think at Oroville they had six different boat launch locations, and they're funneling them into 2 or 3 to make sure it's manageable. Currently, DWR is estimating that it's going to cost $9 million for this effort this year, I believe. And as they further develop the designs of that image I showed you on the previous page, where it just kind of showed the cylinder of where a UV system would go, they'll fine tune this, and it's expected this number may increase. Next slide. So I touched a little bit about policy that needs to be updated. So there's existing water code that makes it illegal to transport quagga and zebra mussels, and CDFW as an emergency action also listed golden mussel on that list of invasive species that you're prohibited to move. And as you can imagine, public water agencies, the state water project, as they're moving water from the Delta to San Luis and throughout, there's direct conflict with that policy. So SWC, and then I believe Metropolitan Water District were kind of working together and has developed a coalition that's aiming to get a trailer bill passed this year to amend Fish and Wildlife Code 2301 and 2302. And then what the amendments to 2301 will kind of, the main goal is that anyone that has a kind of control plan in place on how to handle the mussel and then potentially, eradicate the species, although, there's caveats saying that might not be feasible. Anyone that has that may continue to move water for conveyance purposes and public benefit. And that kind of reduces the liability there. And similarly on 2302, it's making sure that, it's making aware that this problem wasn't caused by those responsible for dealing with it. So there's a request for funding that would kind of offset these costs to all the public water agencies. So those are the two kind of Fish and Wildlife Code that we're actively working to find a champion for on the legislator side in California to see if it can move forward as a trailer bill. I believe the last update or just earlier this week or yesterday was there's over 20 signatories on there. I believe AVEK is one of those where the logo will be added to that trailer bill letter that we're putting together. And I think the goal is to have that within the next couple of weeks, find somebody that'll champion it and take it forward from there. Next slide, please. I believe that's the end of my slides. Yep. And with that, I'd love to take any questions you all have.
Yeah, very, very good presentation, very easy to follow. Didn't the board members have questions?
I had a question. Manny, where'd this originate from? Anybody have any idea?
Likely China or another South Asian country. I know Brazil has them. So the exact origin is hard to determine. So those international ports, they have good processes in place, but somehow, a few got through and now they're starting to increase in population.
Okay, can we send them the $9 million bill?
I really wish we could. I mean, there's probably larger things at play that we want to settle up on. But I will say that the appropriate agencies are at the table, and they've even, I think it's a public lands commission, and they were also participants in that multi-agency team that was put together, and they did further restrict or make the requirements of entering the ports here in California more stringent. They were already pretty stringent, but now there's even harsher kind of requirements that they have to follow to make sure that they can dock here at our ports.
Right. Now, did you say that they were in 30 different spots in the Delta or the aqueduct, or how many locations have they been cited at?
About approximately 30.
Okay. Thank you, Manny.
Director Ferris?
No question.
Okay, is there any further comments? Okay, thank you much, and that really helps to educate the board, so much appreciated.
All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Manny. Have a good night.
You too. All right.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 8A2, state water contractor's budget.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Peter Thompson. This item was reviewed yesterday with the State Water Project Committee.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, President Lane, board members. So this item was reviewed yesterday, and we went into a look at the different cost centers for state water contractor budget. And we did get a recommendation to move forward with the budget. However, it was made clear that there's a need to take a deeper look as we move forward with state water contractors on the more specific costs. So we'll be doing that as we move forward. But to provide a little bit of background, the state water contractors is a staff of 9. They're centered in Sacramento. They're typically subject matter experts in a variety of fields, from environmental science to engineering to audit level finance. And they serve as the eyes and ears of all of the state water contractors to help with affordability issues and reliability issues on the state water project. So a good example of that tonight was Manny Bahia. So he's one of the state water contractor staff. He is an engineer by trade. He has previously worked for DWR. And so it's beneficial to us to have someone like Manny who can say, okay, golden mussel is going to be a problem. And then even have the wherewithal to know that there's statutes within the California Fish and Wildlife Code that could be problematic for state water contractors, and then seek to alleviate that. So those are the type of services that the State Water Contractors Group provides. So with that, look at the budget there. So on the far right is the 2025-2026 budget. The total is $368,393. That will come in lower because they do anticipate coming in under budget this year, and their practice is to refund anything that they don't use. So we'll be slightly less than that 368,393. You'll see that the rows have different titles there. So up at the top is State Water Contractors Dues Funds. That goes to pay for bulk of the staff work, and also like the office that they rent, things of that nature. State Water Contractor Energy Fund goes specifically towards the energy efforts of the state water contractors. So one of the reasons why these are broken up is that contractors pay different portions of the cost depending on these different categories. So for the energy fund, if you use more energy, you pay more towards the energy fund. And that goes towards staffing, that goes towards some of the outreach efforts within the energy group. State Water Contractor Bay Delta Fund is basically anything that touches the Delta. So whether that's permitting to use our pumps, protecting our water rights coming out of Oroville, running science experiments to try to help change our permits for the better, those costs all come out of that Bay Delta Fund. And then finally is the State Water Contractor DCP Fund. So those that had previously agreed to be a part of the project had funded some early upfront funds to help with outreach and CEQA work. While that work's still ongoing, you'll notice that the last 2 years, there's been no contributions to those funds. So we'll move to the next slide. This one, it's hard to see, but this shows all the participating state water contractors. And it should be noted that there's 29 state water contractors, 27 participate in the State Water Contractors Group. AVEK is the third largest, and we have about just under 4% of the cost for state water contractors. And that lists all the different agencies, all their costs for their dues this year. All right. Thank you, Holly. So key takeaways, 5-year average for the dues is $375,753. So we're slightly under that on the dues request today, and it's about 6,000, almost 6,700 less than 24-25. There was a change. I think we discussed this a little bit last year where we were moving from, there was an opportunity to move from paying your dues based on your percentage of total deliveries to changing the dues based on total table A allocation. And that was something we talked about the board about that might be a benefit to AVEK. And that is the way the board, the State Water Contractor Board chose to go. So there's about a net savings to AVEK this year of about $20,000 on dues for making that change. So I think that wraps up all of my information on the State Water Contractors budget. But happy to take questions if you have them.
Are there any questions for? Is there no question? I had a comment, and I'm gonna support this, but reluctantly. This adds, we're paying about $1,000 a day for this organization. It adds about $9 an acre foot per acre foot. We sell. We're supposed to be going over the budget. The representative that was on the phone yesterday talked about all the things it did, but very little on the budget. And we asked several questions that she was unable to answer. She's supposed to get back, and I'll be surprised if she does. But there's 9 employees, and it averages a little over $300,000 per employee. And I had one question, Peter. The administrative office, administrative. What is administrative? What does that cover? Office administrative.
That would cover some of the costs for the building.
Better cover all of them.
But I'm sorry. Yes, the cost of the building is included in that.
What else? That's pretty expensive rent.
That's true. I asked Julie, and she said that it's about half of that. So some of that also is IT for the building, for their uses, the office equipment, the different services that they need in order to run the organization.
For 9 people, what's the square footage of the building? Approximately.
I'm sorry, President Lane, I don't know, but I can look that up for you.
Anyway, that cost associated with 9 employees does not seem reasonable. And anyway, the questions we asked, none of them were answered yesterday. A lot of information is going to be coming back. Hopefully it does. And hopefully the committee, hopefully we can look at it in more detail. And all we did is looked at it in the broad spectrum and don't know until we get the detail of the budget. But I have a feeling it's probably way over budgeted, and the $300,000 per employee it averages. I'm wondering if that administrative that covers any labor, any employees besides the building.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah. But anyway, we need to look at it in much more detail because we're not looking at it any detail now, just in a broad spectrum. So I'm going to vote for it, but reluctantly.
Yeah. And if I could just add, President Lane, Peter scheduled a call for tomorrow with the general manager of State Water Contractors to make sure we get all the information that you've requested.
Every time, the last few years I've asked for information, it's never been forthcoming. So let's see if it does.
Not because of staff.
No, not because of staff.
Yeah. So we're going to fall through.
Observation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's no further, comments. Director Parrish.
Yes, Mr. President, I move approval of Board Order 882.
We have a motion by Director Parrish. We have a second. Second by Director Mercy. Madam Secretary.
Audrey Miller. Yes. Robert Harris.
Yes.
Dave Tremblay.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy. Sam.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the Finance Committee, and Director Dias is chairman of that committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Finance Committee met last Thursday, and the first item that we discussed was the check register list for the period of May 29th, 2025 through June 11th, 2025. And I believe that our General Manager, Knudsen, will highlight some of the items on this list.
All right. Thank you, Director Dias. So yeah, if you look on page 13 of your packet, that's the first page of the check registry. And I'll go through and hit the highlights. We went through this in detail with the Finance Committee last week. But item number 1, as every checklist, refers to DWR and payment of just over 1.5 million. This is for a monthly fixed cost on the state water project associated with the statement of charges. Next period, we'll see the variable cost. Next page, item number 44 is a payment to Aqua Aerobic Systems. And this was approved quite some time ago by the board. It's a rebuild of our ozone generator. This has to do with the Court Hill Water Treatment Plant ozone generator. And there's a long lead time to get them scheduled. It's highly specialized work, and they had some parts and different things they had to order. But this is a payment of just over $270,000, and that's within the board approved amount. So happy to report that unit is up and operational now. Next page, item 47, progress payment to Cal Sierra Construction. This is associated with the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project, just under $81,000. And that item we will be bringing to the Water Projects Committee soon to file the notice of completion. So they're getting that project wrapped up. Item 48 is a payment to Carrier Corporation for the redundant chiller or air conditioner unit here at the admin building. A little over $92,000. And if we fast forward a few pages on page 19.
And just one question.
Oh, yeah.
It's really just more information than anything else, but 55 Incom, I haven't seen them in a long time. They're doing a little work for the agency.
Yeah, this is the full payment, correct, Justin? A little over $13,000, and that's to have them review the design associated with the SNP Phase 2 project. If you remember, AECOM designed the original SNP Phase 1 project, and we wanted to get their eyes on this.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, to make sure it all coordinates with the original intent of the project. So they did that work very, very quickly, and we got some good comments and feedback from them. So again, fast forward to page 19, just a few payments associated with the High Desert Water Bank program. These are all, as you know, reimbursed by Metropolitan Water District, but we have check 1404, which is a progress payment to Bakersfield Well and Pump for the current drilling package number 3, just under 1.1 million. Also check number 1406, progress payment to Nicholas Construction, who did some modifications to the turnout and stop log installation required by Department of Water Resources. And those are the highlights. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, Matt, how's the new roof coming along?
Yeah, you probably saw when you pulled in, it's looking pretty good. They're moving fairly quick. They got all the old roof material removed, at least the metal. In the contract, we had a certain number of pieces of plywood that we wanted to have or built into the contract to replace. And I think they replaced about 75 sheets of plywood. And you probably saw coming in the different colored plywood, but it's mostly around the perimeter as the pieces that needed to be replaced.
Looks like it's 3/4 plywood.
Yeah, it's pretty thick stuff.
It's like they're using a high quality plywood. There.
Yeah.
And then they have some kind of overlay.
Yeah, they've got the overlay and the installation in the parking lot. So that will go on over the next couple weeks. And then we'll schedule for the metal to be reinstalled. So they're doing good.
Good. Thank you, Matt.
Yep, you're welcome. Anything else on the checklist?
I'm just gonna make a comment that the chiller money was very well spent. It's very chilly.
All right.
Okay, is there any other questions on the, for the, check register? If not, the board order, it's 8B1 would be in order. We have a motion.
Mr.
Also
President,
move. Also
Okay, we-
move, this is Keith.
Okay, we would, motion by Director Dias,
and I'll second.
second by Director Miller. Madam Secretary, if there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, yeah, motion carried. Yeah, thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
And the next item on the Finance Committee report is 8B2, consideration and possible action to accept and file the treasurer's report for the month ending May 31st, 2025. And I believe our finance manager, Teresa Yates, will present this.
Director Dias, and treasurer's report starts on page 23 of your packet. And the average yield to maturity for the total portfolio for May was 4.377%, which was down 0.014% from April. Average days to maturity for the total portfolio was 226 days, or approximately 8 months. And total cash and investments at May 31st was 169.4 million, which was down 4.77 million from the prior month. But if you recall, the bond principal and interest payments were made, the reason for the decrease. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the little treat you made, it helps.
The staff report. Good.
Looks like you do a good job there, Teresa. So,
Thank you.
any other questions or comments?
I have a question. Teresa, on the Mission Bank money market,
Yes.
are we set at that 0.65%, or is it variable, or
The 3.75?
well, there's no line number, but we've got 1,073 in the bank there. It says portfolio. Oh, it's 65% of the portfolio. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
But 3.75.
3.75% is what it's paying currently.
Okay, and
Yeah.
we're only 0.65% of the portfolio. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
But this could be so confusing, but you've got it laid out very good. We can get a good glimpse of it, a good idea in just a few minutes.
Good.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, the motion would be in order to accept it.
Make a motion to accept it.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion is Director, Jay?
Director Tremblay.
Okay, very well. Okay, we have a motion and a second. No further questions or comments. Madam Secretary, we can have a roll call.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yeah.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah, thank you much. Very good. We'll
And
move on.
That concludes the Finance Committee report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Director Dias. We'll move on now to planning, Illinois State Water Contractors, and Director Dias, that goes back to you.
Yes, thank you. The Antelope Valley State Water Contractors Association met on June the 12th, and our 3 member agencies were requested to return to their respective boards and obtain approval for the budget for 2025 and 2026 and the funding contributions. And I believe our Assistant General Manager, Peter Thompson, will report on this.
All right. Thank you, Director Dias. Right. Yep. So I think as Director Dias mentioned there very succinctly, it's our requirement after passing the budget at the association to bring it back to the individual agencies. So that's what we're doing tonight. And the request is for the standard $10,000 to cover all 3 agencies in the basic operational budget. So the basic budget is at $29,600. Our portion is $10,000. So in your packet, on page 39 is the resolution that we're seeking approval for. And on page 40 is the budget, should you like to look at that. Just so you're aware, some of the key things that the association is doing right now, they're continuing to distribute the funds for AV Irwin Prop 1 grants. They're also working on the development of the Little Rock Creek groundwater recharge project together and pursuing grant funding for culverts to improve recharge in the valley as a joint project between Los Angeles County Waterworks and the association members. So those are the key activities. And I'm happy to answer questions that you might have.
For 2023-24, there was a loss. The net income and a loss. Page 40. Is that correct?
That is correct. I believe that has to do with the flow of funds that year, where we were paying our contributions to the AV Fairgrounds in there, but the standard budgeting things were in line. And we've since been able to get back on track with the fairgrounds. If you'll remember, there was we were supposed to contribute back during the COVID time period. That fell away. They didn't do the work. They didn't do the upkeep on the conservation garden. And then once we got back in line, things going again, then they requested the funds. I believe that's the difference that we're seeing there.
And there was a loss also in 21-22. I'm not sure if I completely understood that explanation.
Yeah, and I know Matt wants to help me on that one. I do know that way our controller Hoffmeyer has explained it is that sometimes it's about the timing of the funds, but not necessarily a loss to the association.
That's my understanding as well. It has to do with income coming in as revenue versus expenses going out and the timing throughout the year.
It still doesn't look good.
Yeah. But the good thing is like Peter said, you look at where we're at in the current budget and proposed budget, we're in the net position. We're in the positive position.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead and look at 2020, 2021. That showed a net income of 43,042 with total expenditures of 25. And that was the year that we all paid for the $25,000 contribution for the fair garden. And then I don't think it was expensed until the year that we show the $10,000 minus, right?
That helps.
Yeah, so if you look at 2020, 2021, you'll see everything.
I can understand that. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. You have anything additional?
I do not.
Does the board have any comments or questions? So,
Mr. President, I'll move approval of Board Order 8C1, which is the adoption of resolution number 2518.
we have a motion by Director Parrish. Do we have a second?
I'll second. This is Keith.
We have a second by Director Dias. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Harris.
Yeah.
Jay Tremblay,
Yeah.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Sue Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lang.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you. Does that conclude your report, Director Dias?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you much. Okay, now we're going to move on to item number D, Water Master and Groundwater Committee. And Director Paris is chairman of that committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll have Matt start with the first item, which is going over the agenda for our Water Master meeting, which is tomorrow, and everybody should attend.
All right, thank you, Director Paris. So beginning on page 43 of your packet is a brief staff report that Angel helped put together. Attached to that staff report is the agenda for tomorrow's Water Master meeting at 10 a.m. So I've got a couple items. This is an opportunity for the AVEK board to have a discussion and give direction on which way our representative, Director Paris, should vote tomorrow at the Water Master meeting. So the first action item to consider is approval of releasing the request for proposal for the next 3 years worth of audits for the Water Master. We've had the same firm for last 3 years, I think, maybe 3+ years. So that contract is now expired, and so we need to go out with a new RFP. Admin staff put together RFP, pretty straightforward. We have our standard list of firms that we'd send that out to. So our recommendation is to authorize Director Paris to approve tomorrow, sending out the RFP. Any questions on that item?
Yeah, what's the deadline on that?
On the RFP for the audit,
Yes.
financial audit? Do you remember, Teresa, off the top of your head? August 27th. Okay.
I thought it was July 18th. Was that the? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is for a financial audit.
Okay. Thank you.
Pretty light agenda tomorrow. We have a couple of applications. We have 2 replacement well applications. First one is MKK Properties. It's a known small pumper, and they're requesting to drill a replacement well due to elevated arsenic levels they have in their existing well. So this was discussed at the advisory committee, and advisory committee is recommending approval, 9 yes, and there was 2 abstentions on this. There were some questions about, from the advisory committee, is how could the Water Master develop a process to where the water quality data that's being collected for these new wells gets passed along to the Water Master. So I think they're kind of kicking around some ideas on how to get a hold of the Title 22 report that gives all the water quality data on domestic wells and production wells. The next item is a replacement well for Southern California Edison. They're an Exhibit 4 party. They need to also drill a replacement well to comply with LA County Building Department requirements for a drinking water standard well. My understanding is the existing well does not have a proper sanitary seal. So this new well would meet all the standards and requirements to meet that requirement. This was recommended to be approved by the advisory committee, 11 yeses and 0 no's. So my recommendation is for the AVEK board to give direction to Director Paris to approve both these applications. Any questions?
If there's no objection,
We'll just move ahead.
You know.
Yeah.
If any director has questions, now's the time.
Yeah, speak up. And then we have a couple others. One transfer. This is a transfer of 80 acre-feet of permanent Exhibit 4 water, 80 acre-feet of production right. And it's a transfer from California Compaction Corporation to the Antelope Valley Water Trust. No point of extraction was provided as part of this application. It's purely for investment purposes only. Advisory committee recommends approval, 11 yes, 0 no's. The next one is a new point of extraction application. Qualified small pumper. This applicant currently shares a well with their neighbor, and they want to get out from that shared well agreement and have their own well on their own property. So This item also was recommended to be approved by the advisory committee, 11 yes, 0 no's. You can see down at the bottom, we're recommending direction to AVEK rep to go ahead and support approval of these two applications. Pretty uncontroversial agenda packet, and those were the highlights. So unless you have anything else on the agenda that jumps out at you, now is the time to discuss that.
Let's just take a moment.
Okay. We also included the minutes from, or the report from the advisory committee. That begins on page 48.
And we get down to this closed session item. Conference with the legal, counsel, existing litigation. There's four items. I guess that's why it's closed, but one, Rancho Sierra Properties. Do we have any idea what that's about?
So unfortunately, because of the memo that issued by the water master attorney, items discussed with closed session for the that relate to the water master can't be discussed by the agencies that are represented.
We need to make dang sure that those are really suitable for closed session. I think some items that go into are probably not suitable for them.
Yeah.
So how can this board advise if we don't know what's happening?
Well, I think that would be a discussion amongst the board with Director Paris, who is our rep, to bring up those questions.
Rob, do you have any comments, suggestions?
Well, on the Rancho Sierra property, it was reported out at the last meeting, at the end of the meeting, that the bid by the city of Lancaster was approved as the highest bid to get that property.
Yep.
How was that advertised? How was it exposed to the market?
It was through meetings and things.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. It was through the meetings and things, and I think there were 2 bids on it. And
The question, how was it exposed to the market?
I think it was exposed through the minutes of meetings and through, Peter, do you have a recollection exactly how?
Other than the meetings of the minutes.
Meetings, yeah. And it was discussed several times in open session.
As a foreclosure, wouldn't that be public record? Was it recorded as a default?
It wasn't a foreclosure. It was,
You put a lien up, didn't you? Or,
yeah, Water Master did put a lien up.
so if that's public information, would have been noticed in a paper or?
Yeah, I can find that out for you, George.
But I mean, that should have been exposed. The realty board, if you do the minimum it's required, just by going to the public notices, that's how people get their sweetheart deals. And they need to be exposed to the market. If anybody here was to sell their house, they wouldn't just put a legal notice. They'd want to make sure it was exposed. And I'm not, maybe it was, I don't know, but this board is not informed if that happened or not.
Yeah, I'll find that out for you, George.
Peter, do you know?
I do not.
Who's responsible for seeing to get the best price?
I believe our attorney was in charge of that process.
No, he's not. Okay. The attorney reviews the legal documents, but how it's exposed to the market, it should be the board and the general manager. Matt, do you have any comments?
I don't. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to the closed session conversations anymore.
We need to correct this, whatever it takes to correct it.
Yeah.
George,
Okay.
it's John Yucasted.
Hey, John.
Yeah, I agree with you, George. I think it was done improperly.
We'll see what we can do. Hopefully we can do something.
Thank you.
Okay, is there
Any other questions on the agenda for tomorrow?
get the board's with it, okay with everything at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then we have one more item under this committee. Dr. Parrish, are you good with me going?
I would like you to go ahead
Okay.
with the yearly report.
right.
Annual report. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. So it's that time of year again that the Water Master engineer is preparing the annual report for the Water Master. So the initial draft was recently posted on the website. And so AVEK staff is starting to review that report to make sure all the data is documented properly in the report as it relates to AVEK regarding our banked water supplies, groundwater or recovery of banked water supplies, groundwater production, our banking operations, etc. So written comments should be submitted to the Water Master engineer. What is that? Yesterday, right? Was the initial comments, but we'll have comments available up until July 23rd when Water Master has that public hearing. So staff does going through it. We do have a few comments on it, so we'll be providing those comments to the engineer as we go through it. I just wanted tonight to hit on some of the highlights that are reported in the annual report. This is the 9th annual report for the Water Master. It's the 2nd year since the end of the ramp down period. Total production recorded, which includes estimated small pumper production, was 63,563 acre feet for calendar year 2024. As you know, this is below the native safe yield, which is 82,300 acre feet per year. AVEK's recovery of stored water was about 5,400 acre feet. Most of that was delivered to our northern system. Those areas that are served by the Roseman Water Treatment Plant. A little bit of that water went through 80th and H to the LA County just to keep that system circulated. A total of 105,718 acre feet of imported water was provided to the basin in 2024. AVEK, Palmdale, and Little Rock Creek Irrigation District made up about 67,262 acre feet of that. The remaining was imported by Metropolitan Water District and delivered to the High Desert Water Bank. Total of about 84.45 acre feet per year of new production was approved in 2024. So not a lot of new production was approved last year, only 84 acre feet. The long-term graphs and water level contour maps indicate the water levels have either stabilized or the rate of decline have decreased in recent years when compared to the previous 24-year period. So that's good news. And you'll see some of that on the next slide. The Water Master engineer also updated the groundwater model as part of their contract late last year. So these graphs are kind of interesting at that. The one on the left shows the change in groundwater elevation changes from the spring of 2023 to spring of 2024. So the blue or the dark purple shaded areas show a rise in water level. And then anything kind of a brown, dark brown is a decline in water levels. Everything that's yellow is unchanged. So if you remember in 2023, we had the 100% allocation year with the State Water Project. So that's when AVEK was banking pretty heavily at the West Side Water Bank. And you can see on the map, that's where that rise in groundwater level is indicated by the dark purple.
What's the location of the brown on the 2324? Where's that location?
It would be northwest of the West Side Water or of the High Desert Water Bank. or I guess kind of north of the High Desert Water Bank. So along the foothills there of the Tehachapi's.
Where would that decline, Matt?
I have no idea. It probably wasn't due to production. I mean, there's not a lot of production on the northern end of that. Probably just had to do with local runoff from the Tehachapi's during that year, or lack of. And then on that same figure, you can see over by Little Rock Creek, you can see the big rise in level, and that is due to the runoff from the Little Rock Creek watershed into the groundwater basin. Also, a little bit around Upper Amargosa Creek due to natural recharge as well as artificial recharge from the Upper Amargosa project. And then you fast forward 1 year, graph on the right, or map on the right, shows the change in water elevation from spring of 2024 to spring of 2025. So you can see around Westside Water Bank, not as much of an increase, but a slight increase in water level. And that's because we obviously didn't bank as much water in 2024 as we did in the previous year. But then if you look farther out west near the High Desert Water Bank, in 2024 is when we got all the recharge operational. And that's when Metropolitan recharged roughly 40,000 acre feet in 2024. And you can see the big rise in water elevation there. And then not as much runoff from the Little Rock watershed. So still rise in elevation, but not what we saw back in 2023. So.
Very interesting. Is there any questions from the general manager? Questions or comments?
Question? All right.
Yeah, very good report.
All right. And that's all I have to report on 8D2.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 81 in this executive committee regarding, as we all know, AVEK's acted as the water master for some time. We were, asked to do that, and now things have changed a little bit. We're going to be going out to bid, and it changes AVEK's position, somewhat. And Matt, would you care to follow up on that?
Yeah, thank you, President Lane. So on page 52 of your packet is a draft letter that I put together that tonight we're looking for approval to send this letter to the Water Master Engineer in response to the RFP that the Water Master has sent out. So on the screen, a little bit of background. As President Lane mentioned, AVEK has assisted the Water Master with administrative duties in all but 1 year since 2016. And we did that either jointly with Palmdale Water District or independently as AVEK. AVEK has been providing the admin services under the existing MOU since 2024. So if you remember, after Hallmark got terminated or refused to continue with the Water Master, there was an MOU entered into between AVEK and the Water Master. So more recently, the Water Master decided to go out with a request for a proposal for admin services. They sent that request out on June 10th, and those proposals are due to the Water Master on July 7th. So the way I see it, down at the bottom, AVEK has kind of three options. We could, option one, do nothing, just kind of sit tight, don't respond to the RFP. Item two, we could submit a full-blown proposal per the RFP requirements. Or we could do item number three, which is submit the letter that's included in your packet to the Water Master stating that AVEK is willing to continue under the current MOU, or if we want to amend the MOU in any way, if we're requested to do so by the Water Master. So my recommendation is to submit the letter that's in your packet on behalf of AVEK, stating that if requested by the Water Master, AVEK is willing to continue providing the admin services to the water master under an MOU versus an agreement. Kind of some justification for that recommendation is, AVEK being a public agency, I don't feel it's appropriate that we should compete with private entities or consulting firms to actively pursue work through the RFP process that's been laid out. That process and framework is really geared around private firms to pursue work. And the AVEK being a public agency, we shouldn't get in the middle of that. But alternatively, public agencies can be engaged or selected to provide a specific service to the community through an interagency MOU. And that's proven to work pretty good since 2016. It's just a mutual consensus that everybody thinks it's in the best interest of the Antelope Valley for AVEK or Palmdale Water District or some existing public agency to provide a service rather than actively pursue or compete for work. So in summary, if you haven't had a chance to read the letter, hopefully you have, but I feel the letter accomplishes the following. It clearly explains why AVEK is choosing not to submit a formal proposal per the RFP. I just went through some of that. It clearly states that if the water master determines AVEK is the best option for the valley and requests AVEK to continue providing the services, AVEK is willing to continue under an MOU of some sort. The letter explains AVEK's position on staffing, invoicing, the scope of work, and commitment to avoid any actual or perceived conflict of interest. So some of that's summarized on the second page. When it comes to staffing, it needs to be clear to the water master that the employees of AVEK work for AVEK. We're simply providing a service to the water master, but AVEK's operation and mission come first, and we should have, or I should have, flexibility to determine who's providing that service from AVEK to the water master. I don't want the false perception that our employees are employees of the water master. And lastly, it provides a commitment to support a smooth transition if the water master chooses a third-party administrator. So I think the letter does a good job by kind of responding to the RFP without responding to the RFP. It kind of gives a clear communication as to what AVEK's position is, that we want to be a committed partner to the water master, but only if the water master wants us to do that. So we don't want to compete or fight for something where our services are not wanted.
Yeah, Matt, could you go back to those three options?
Yeah, at the beginning? Yeah, so three options.
The board can just look at them right there. But
we could be silent and do nothing, and see if somebody else proposes based on the RFP. We could submit a proposal per the RFP requirements, but that's going to require, I strongly recommend we don't do that because it changes the relationship a little bit. And then option 3 is the letter that we just went through.
So, this is a pretty important decision. So we'd like to hear from the board of directors and their thoughts. And if anybody would like to address the boards in the audience or is listening in, you're welcome to do so. Is there any board members? Dr. Barris?
Yes, Mr. President, I agree with Matt on the proposal that we should submit a letter stating AVEK is willing, and the letter that is drafted, I think, tells the Water Master Board what we would like to do. And if there's proposals by third parties that the Water Master Board would prefer, they should take that. I would recommend that if others put in forward and there is an interview process, that we would make Matt available to talk to the Water Master Board about you know, what we're going to do, but not a full-blown proposal as requested in the RFP for the reasons that Matt stated. So
Good comments. Is there any other board of directors?
I'll just say that I agree with that, with Matt
Good.
and Rob in that.
Okay.
I like the letter.
Does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, I agree with Matt on, number 3, submitting that letter, you know. So,
George?
Yes, yeah, John?
Yeah, this is John Yuka said. Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think that he did a very good job on the letter.
Yeah, he did. He did. Okay, is there anything further? Yeah, Julie?
Julie's gonna say something.
I don't agree with the letter. I was in hopes that we would go out to the RFP because we had a couple of the board members that just were insistent that they didn't select or didn't want to go forward with AVEK because they didn't have an RFP in. So we were in hopes that this go around, you would submit an RFP and that would still their concerns.
I understand your concern.
And let me respond to Julie's concerns. I think the last time there was an RFP, AVEK was not willing at that time to go forward with the administration.
Right.
And didn't submit anything to go forward. And, you know, after much thought and discussion, this seemed to be the best way to go. It took a little convincing for Matt and me in the discussion, but I do agree with this proposal. And I think it clearly will outline to the Water Master Board that we are willing with their request to continue the administration. They've had 7-8 years of experience with pretty much AVEK staff, for the most part running everything. They know who our staff is. They work closely with our staff. They know what our pricing is. They know what we have to offer. So it's kind of redundant for us to do a full RFP and compete against anybody. So I think it's going to take obvious community support from you and others to let the Water Master Board know what the preferences of the public and the landowners are for us to go forward. But
And we'll have that support, but I know we're still going to have, Galen met with one of the board members, and he specifically told Galen, if AVEK would have submitted an RFP, I would have voted for it. He was kind of the lone holdout there.
Right.
So it's disappointing to me because I in my mind, I think he has somebody in line and it'll be double the cost that we're paying now for less service. I'm certain of that. We have a good relationship with the AVEK staff, and they have always done us right, and they know the judgment.
and the MOU that we're going to propose in this letter outlines everything that anybody coming forward with an RFP would provide. It says how, you know, what we're going to charge and what we're going to provide and everything like that. So if that is an excuse that's used not to go forward with AVEK, I think, you know, and it's going to take 5 members of the board to agree to some other alternative, right?
Right. Okay.
And if it makes you feel any better, Julie, look at the letter as responding to the RFP. I mean, this is basically our proposal.
Okay.
It's not meeting the requirements or what the information requested to a T in the RFP, but this is what AVEK feels is best for AVEK.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the board is probably available to accept this if we're asked.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
thank you, Julie.
A motion
Thank
will
you,
be in
Julie.
order.
Does this
Yeah, you know, it's not written as a board order, but we do need,
board order.
I would like
Okay.
approval to send this
Yeah.
letter out.
Mr. President, I move that we approve submitting the letter that's in our agenda packet as our proposal to the Water Master Board for the RFP
We have a motion by Director Parrish. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
A second by Jay. Is everything in order?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Parrish,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Julie, we still haven't walked away, you know that. Read that letter. Okay, thank you. Very good, very good letter, Matt.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go right back to your general manager's report.
All right, so got a few items. We're gonna tag team this. First item, I'm gonna call Justin Livesay up. This is something that President Lane and I have talked about recently, and that's getting an electronic voting software for board votes. So Justin was able to find a very simple, inexpensive option for us, and he's gonna go through that.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Good evening, President Lane, members of the board. Yeah, we did some homework. We got kind of lucky. We found a good firm out of Tehachapi that was able to fix our amplifier here and has some knowledge about the crush run system. And so we picked his brain about options for kind of meeting management softwares that might be out there. And he said there's a lot of them that are very complicated, can do a lot of different things, probably very expensive as well. But he recommended this open meeting as an option for us. He thought it sounded like it might be a good fit. So there's a list of bullets there at the top of this slide of all the things that it can do. Electronic roll call, voting, agenda management, minutes. There's a speaker queue and a request to speak option, ability to manage public comments. Some of those things are a little bit beyond what we really need. But we're really trying to pinpoint something that's easy to use for the electronic voting. And the electronic roll call might be a nice feature from this as well. This works in a hybrid format. It can work for our meetings here where we've got some folks remote and some folks here in the room. It's compatible with Windows devices and any kind of Android or iOS tablet or smartphone. And it's pretty reasonably priced. There's initial setup cost of $6,750. And then an ongoing annual licensing cost of $3,750. We've met with these folks. It sounds pretty promising. I've got a few screenshots here of a presentation that they went through with us, starting here with the electronic voting. So when it's time to make a vote, the board secretary would initiate the display shown here.
Hey, Director Parrish, your chair.
Oh, somebody in Zoom world. So you can see the display that would be shown on the left side of that screen. It would show the whatever resolution or item we're voting on. 3 simple buttons. You vote yes, no, or abstain. Those votes are held privately until everybody has voted. Shown on the screen on the right is what would be displayed here in the room or in Zoom. So you would have each of the board members that are present. It would know if you're absent or not. And then if your vote's been cast or not. And then once that's cast, all the votes are displayed in a public display format. It calculates whether that motion passed or didn't pass. You'll notice on this screen, there's an orange M and an orange S. You have the option also to motion and second using that software as well. So that can be pretty quick and efficient process, it seems like. And then once all the votes are cast, it'll show how everyone voted and tally it all up. That's it. So it's a pretty simple.
Does it help with the minutes to understand?
It can help with the minutes, yeah. So it would record all that information, who voted, how they voted, and whether it passed or failed. It can get a little bit more advanced. It has opportunities for Holly to go in there and type notes as she needs to and different things to help assist with both managing the minutes. And there's also a template to do agenda management as well. So.
Any questions or comments?
Question.
Yes, Dr. Miller.
Has Secretary Hughes been able to look at the software, and what do you think?
Looks promising, looks interesting. Like, I'd be agreeable to check it out. If you guys are wanting to do it.
What do you use right now?
Nothing.
Just regular Microsoft product or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to know how.
Thank you.
The user.
Yeah.
And even Angel or any of the other ladies?
Yeah, we had a demo of it, and Holly and Angel both sat in on the demo with myself and Matt. So
Okay.
Director Barris?
Yeah, I like it. Could we use it for Water Master and other meetings too?
No.
We'll pay our share.
Yeah, I'm sure it could be incorporated there.
Only if Mr. President will allow it.
No, it's work in progress. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Drew.
You had some notes about how it handled discussion, public comment. I know we've had some issues with Zoom where people listen in, forget their mics on and saying or other things. And
yeah,
so is that something that would be able to keep that? It said something about a public comment queue.
there is a public comment queue, so it won't assist with microphones being unmuted and people talking. We have to handle that within Zoom itself. But on third, et cetera, and then it would provide an opportunity for the board secretary to say, okay, so and so, it's your turn to speak at this point in time, and then move on to the next. Even amongst board members, it could be used in a very similar way.
Yeah, I like that. I think.
What are you getting at?
Well, I just think, well, like you said, when it,
No, I'm just kidding.
we had our friend that
I'm just
saying a little, might, keep things a little more orderly.
Definitely.
Well, that's pretty cool.
And the cost wise is pretty dang reasonable.
Yeah.
It's pretty reasonable, yeah. So no action needed by the board right now, just.
That's correct. Yeah, we just thought, since it dealt with the full board and board meetings, we just wanted to inform you before we proceeded.
Well, Justin and staff, you've done a good job. It's within your spending, $25,000.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
I think you could probably proceed with it unless we hear anything to the contrary.
Okay. Sounds like everybody's in favor, so good job, Justin.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you much. Okay,
And then, continuing with the GM report, Peter's gonna go through some of the state precipitation.
That'll be relatively quick. We've come to the end of that water year or any meaningful precipitation. So this is where it's pretty much going to land unless we get one of those weird hurricanes in the middle of fall. But if you look at the one on the left, the Northern Sierra precipitation, and that came in over average, which is great news. Unfortunately, on the right, the San Joaquin precipitation, it came in well under average. And that's really where we get kind of cut off, is because we're connected to that San Joaquin with our pumps. Regardless if we have good flow in the Northern Sierras, we usually can't take advantage of it because of low flows on the San Joaquin. So that was one of those water years. If it had been flip-flopped, we probably would have had close to a 70% allocation. But because of this low flow in the Central Sierras, it really shut us down at that 50%. All right, next slide, Holly. Okay, so some good news. All of the reservoirs are relatively full throughout the state. And the one notable one that isn't very full right now, San Luis, will be rising. So we'll take a look at that top reservoir there, Lake Oroville storage level. You can see that's almost at max level. It's going to continue to come down through the rest of the year up until probably the winter months. And they estimate it'll get down to about 1,800,000 acre feet instead of the current almost 3.5 million it's at right now. But that's still above average. So we'll start out the water year in 2026 with an above average position in Oroville. At the bottom one, San Luis, it's tracking with average, but the pumps are going to start to turn on and kind of flow at a high level. And we're going to see the level of San Luis rise. In fact, they predict that the State Water Project share will be full by September, which is good news, but it does mean that there's spill risk pretty much from September through December this year. So it's something we're going to keep an eye on. But it does look like we'll at least start off next year's water year in a very good spot. So
all right,
that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Pete. Good job. And kind of just building on that, you've seen these graphs before, just give an update. So we're currently at 50% state water project allocation. That notice was received in late April. And I believe our winner is Drew Mercy, who guessed 50%. But the first time well, hold that applause. That first time we reported, you have to be present to win. So you weren't at that meeting, so we had to return the new car. So, so on the right, top right chart, you can see the history of the final state water project allocations. Last year was a 40%. Year before that is 100%. And then 21, 22 were both 5%. So you can really see the irregularity of the final allocation. Down at the bottom gives a snapshot of AVEK's water supply portfolio from the state water project at 50% allocation. So the red numbers are kind of deducts. So, began in 2025, we had about 26,000 acre feet of carryover, 72,000 acre feet of table A, and 1,700 acre feet of non-state water projects. So just over 100,000 acre feet of imported water available to us, plus 5,300 of a return obligation from Rosedale, Rio Bravo back to AVEK that has to be delivered this year. And then you got all the deducts. So on the flip side, we have about 5,500 acre feet of obligations or leases and return of water to other agencies. We're estimating about 33,000 acre feet of direct deliveries to our water treatment plants. And then the board previously approved 28,000 acre feet of banking. So, and then after all that, if those numbers come true, we have a target volume in San Luis at the end of this year, or starting off next year at 25,000 acre feet. And then we still have a surplus about 13,500 acre feet on top of that. So we're going to be putting together some plans, talking about that with the executive committee in the coming days and weeks on what we should do with that additional 13,500 acre feet. Should we just add it to San Luis? Should we market it? There's a few other options there. So bottom line, we're in really good shape when it comes to import water supply. We're gonna meet all our demands, do a little bit of banking this year, and start next year off with a healthy volume and carryover.
Very good chart.
Yeah.
Very good.
And then moving on, kind of a snapshot of our banked water supplies. That's the chart on the left. So it breaks down to the various facilities. At the end of this year, based on our projected adds or banking operation, plus what we plan to pump out of the water banks to meet our customer demands, we're going to end the year about 132,500 acre feet of banked water. And that's after the 10% loss through the banking operation. So pretty healthy volume. And then chart on the right shows our adjudicated groundwater production rights. So after our lease with LA County Waterworks this year, plus a little bit of pumping we're doing at the Bench Ranch wells, we're going to end this year with about 28,500 acre feet of groundwater rights. So you add that to the stored imported water, we have right at about 160,000 acre feet of supplies here in the Antelope Valley available to AVEK. Now we're starting to talk about, making improvements to our system to ensure that we can pump that water when we need it and convey it to our customers where they need it. So that's kind of the missing link in our overall water delivery system. And then customer deliveries to date. This shows month to month from January through May. These are actual numbers. And then from June through December, this is what we're estimating based on our water supply planning. And then we break down the various systems. It's color coded, whether it's the dark blue is imported water through the state water project, through our treatment facilities. And then kind of brown is recovered stored water from our various banking operations. And then the green is recovered groundwater or adjudicated rights. So you can see end of the year, we're projecting right at 40,000 acre feet of deliveries through the various systems. So things are tracking well there. Any questions on that?
Matt, some of that water, we're trying to plan what to do with it. Could we sell it to our customers? I mean, would the water districts be interested in some of our excess groundwater? Bank water?
The state water project supply?
Well, anything that's banked, the ever goes to the east side, maybe it wouldn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, they still have to recover it, and they're already, I think most of our customers are kind of maxed out with their groundwater production, so I think their best bet is to, have AVEK invest in additional groundwater recovery capacity in our infrastructure and deliver it to them when they need it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I just make a comment on that point, George?
Sure.
We probably not want to provide it to any of our customers in the central subbasin because that's our area of greatest subsidence. So
Good point.
we want to be able to produce water for them in our bank areas.
Yeah, good point.
Are you finished, Jim?
I got a couple more if you can hang in there, unless you're in a hurry.
No.
Baseball game tonight, George?
Let's see real quick, current flows. This is our typical table. It shows current flows. I'll just hit the highlights. Quartz Hill water treatment plant flows are creeping up. We're at 30 million gallons per day of treatment. Acton demand is up as well. Flow higher than what we've seen in recent years. And we are banking pretty heavily at the Westside Water Bank. The staff had a good idea that to increase the current flow to our banking operations to 200 acre feet per day and meet our 28,000 acre feet of recharge earlier in the year. So the later months of the year, we have the capacity if we want to move water from San Luis prior to losing it. So kudos to the operations staff for coming up with that idea. And then that's about it on this slide. And real quickly, upcoming events. Our Water Master meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have the Palmdale Water District ditch conversion project. That's a groundbreaking ceremony on Thursday. I know there's several directors going to that, as well as myself. Next Tuesday, we have Congressman Whiteside scheduled to come meet with the agency, and that'll be a special board meeting because we're going to have a majority of the board members attend that. So it's at 11:30 a.m. And then, of course, 4th of July holiday, Independence Day on next Friday, a week from this Friday. And that's all I have to report, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Is there any questions, the directors? Okay, moving on to directors' reports. Anything to report?
Done for me.
Okay, moving on to attorney reports.
Nothing to report for the.
Okay, request for future agenda items. Okay, we do have a need to go into closed session. There's two items, one regarding the CB Communities Facilities District and the other Community Facilities District Act. And so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
To executive closed session, we have a motion.
Second.
In a second. Madam Secretary?
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Jay Tremblay,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you everyone for attending.
Recording stopped.